Hello, and welcome to this video. Today we're diving into a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention. The silent struggles of men no one sees. This isn't about pointing fingers or laying blame. It's about shining a light on the burdens, the quiet battles, and the unspoken pain that so many men carry every single day. If you're watching this, maybe you're a man who's felt these struggles yourself, or maybe you're someone who wants to understand the men in your life a little better. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about what it means to be a man in a world that often expects you to be unbreakable, unemotional, and endlessly strong, when the reality is so much more complex. Let's start with a story. A few years ago, I met a guy named David at a coffee shop. He was in his mid-30s, well-dressed, with a warm smile and a quick laugh. To anyone passing by, he looked like he had it all together. A steady job, a nice car, a gym membership he actually used. We got to talking, and over a couple of lattes, he opened up about his life. David had been struggling for years with feelings of inadequacy. He felt like he was failing as a provider, even though he made decent money. He felt disconnected from his friends, who all seemed to be moving on with marriages and kids while he was still single. And he felt this crushing pressure to always seem fine, even when he wasn't. What struck me most was when he said, "I don't talk about this stuff. Who would listen? People expect me to just deal with it." That conversation stuck with me, and it's part of why I wanted to make this video. David's story isn't unique. It's a reflection of a broader truth. Men are often expected to carry their struggles in silence. Society has this unspoken rule that men should be stoic, self-reliant, and emotionally bulletproof. If you're a man, you've probably felt it at some point. The pressure to bottle up your fears, your doubts, your pain, because showing them might make you seem weak. And if you're not a man, you've probably seen this dynamic play out in the men around you. Fathers, brothers, partners, friends who shrug off their struggles with a quick, "I'm fine," when you know they're anything but. So why is this happening? Why are men's struggles so often invisible? And what are the consequences of that invisibility? Let's unpack it. One of the biggest silent struggles men face is the expectation to be a provider. This isn't just about money, though that's a huge part of it. It's about the idea that a man's worth is tied to his ability to provide stability, security, and strength for others. Historically, this made sense. Men were often the primary breadwinners, and their role was to protect and provide for their families. But the world has changed. Women are now just as likely to be in the workforce, and economic pressures mean that single-income households are increasingly rare. Yet the cultural expectation hasn't fully caught up. Men like David still feel this weight, this sense that they're not doing enough if they're not the rock for everyone around them. I remember talking to my own father about this. He's in his 60s now, retired after decades of working long hours to support our family. One evening, over a beer, he admitted something I'd never heard him say before. He said, "There were times I felt like I was drowning, but I couldn't let anyone see it. Your mom, you kids, you needed me to be strong, so I just kept going." That was a revelation to me. My dad, who always seemed like this unshakable pillar, was carrying fears and doubts he never shared. And I wonder how many other men are doing the same, pushing through exhaustion, stress, or even despair because they feel like they have no other choice. This expectation to be a provider doesn't just affect men in their careers. It seeps into relationships too. Think about how men are often judged by their ability to step up in a partnership. If a man isn't pulling his weight financially or emotionally, he's seen as less of a man. But here's the catch. Men are also told to be emotionally available, vulnerable, and communicative in modern relationships. It's a tightrope walk. Be strong, but not too stoic. Be sensitive, but not weak. Be successful, but don't let your ambition overshadow your partner. It's no wonder so many men feel like they're failing no matter what they do. Let's talk about money for a moment, because it's a huge part of this provider pressure. Financial stress is one of the biggest silent struggles men face. Studies consistently show that men are more likely to tie their self-worth to their income than women are. In a 2021 survey by the American Psychological Association, men reported higher levels of stress related to financial instability than women, even when controlling for income levels. Why? Because for many men, money isn't just about paying bills, it's about proving their value. If a man loses his job or can't afford the lifestyle he thinks he's supposed to provide, it's not just a practical problem. It's an existential crisis. I've seen this firsthand with a friend of mine, Marcus. Marcus was laid off from his tech job during a round of corporate downsizing. He was devastated, but he didn't talk about it much at first. Instead, he threw himself into job applications, working late into the night to update his resume and network on LinkedIn. When I asked him how he was holding up, he gave me a tight smile and said, "I'll figure it out." But a few weeks later, over a drink, he admitted he was struggling. He felt like he was letting down his wife, even though she was supportive and had a good job of her own. He felt like he was losing a piece of himself. "I'm supposed to be the one who has it together," he said. "What am I if I can't even do that?" Marcus eventually found another job, but that period of unemployment left scars that went deeper than his bank account. This brings us to another silent struggle, the stigma around men's mental health. If financial stress is an existential crisis for many men, admitting they're struggling emotionally is often seen as a betrayal of masculinity itself. We've all heard the phrases, "man up," "boys don't cry," "tough it out." These aren't just words, they're a cultural script that tells men their emotions are a liability, and the data backs this up. Men are less likely to seek therapy or counseling than women. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, only about 1 in 4 men with a mental health issue will seek professional help, compared to nearly half of women. Why? Because for many men, admitting they need help feels like admitting defeat. I think about my cousin Jake when I reflect on this. Jake was always the life of the party. Funny, charismatic, the guy who could make anyone laugh. But a couple of years ago, he went through a rough patch. His business failed, his marriage was on the rocks, and he was drinking more than he should have. I noticed he was pulling away, canceling plans and dodging questions about how he was doing. When I finally confronted him, he brushed it off at first. "I'm good, man, just going through some stuff." But after some prodding, he broke down. He admitted he felt like a failure, like he'd let everyone down. He said he didn't know how to talk about it because he didn't want to seem weak. It took months of encouragement before he agreed to see a therapist, and even then he was hesitant. Jake's story had a hopeful ending. He's doing better now, but it's a reminder of how hard it is for men to reach out. Part of the problem is that men's mental health struggles are often invisible to others. Women's emotional pain is more likely to be recognized and validated. Think of the cultural acceptance around women crying or talking about their feelings. But men? They're expected to internalize it. And when they do express their pain, it's often in ways that aren't immediately recognizable as distress. Anger, for example, irritability, withdrawal. These are often the only acceptable outlets for men's emotions, but they're also the ones that push people away. So men end up trapped in this cycle. They're hurting, they can't talk about it, and when they try to express it, it comes out in ways that make them feel even more isolated. This isolation is another huge, silent struggle. Men are less likely to have close, emotionally supportive friendships than women. A 2019 study from the Movember Foundation found that 1 in 3 men feel they have no one to turn to when they're struggling. Think about that. 1 in 3. Part of this is cultural. Men are socialized to bond through activities, playing sports, working on projects, watching the game, rather than through deep emotional conversations. And as men get older, those opportunities for connection often dwindle. Marriage, kids, and career demands take priority, and friendships fall by the wayside. For single men, it's even tougher. Without a partner or family, they're often left to navigate life's challenges alone. I've felt this myself at times. In my late 20s, I moved to a new city for a job. I was excited at first, but after the initial thrill wore off, I realized how hard it was to make real connections. I had coworkers, sure, but our conversations rarely went beyond surface-level stuff. I had friends back home, but they were busy with their own lives. There were nights when I'd come home from work, sit on my couch, and feel this ache I couldn't quite name. It wasn't depression exactly, it was just loneliness. And I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't want to burden anyone, and honestly, I didn't even know where to start. I eventually found my footing, but that experience gave me a glimpse into what so many men go through when they feel like they have no one in their corner. This loneliness isn't just an emotional issue, it's a health crisis. Men who lack social support are at higher risk for a range of problems, from depression to heart disease. And here's a sobering statistic. Men are far more likely to die by suicide than women. According to the CDC, men accounted for about 75% of suicide deaths in the United States in 2022. The reasons are complex, but one factor is clear. Men are less likely to seek help or have someone notice they're struggling before it's too late. That's what makes these struggles so silent. They're not just unseen, they're deadly. Let's pivot to another silent struggle, the pressure to perform masculinity. This is a big one, and it's something every man grapples with, whether they realize it or not. From a young age, boys are taught what it means to be a man. Be tough, be dominant, be fearless, don't show vulnerability. These messages come from everywhere. Parents, peers, media. Think about the action heroes we grew up watching. Stoic, muscular guys who never flinched in the face of danger. Or the way boys are teased for crying or showing fear. These early lessons stick and they shape how men navigate the world. But performing masculinity comes with a cost. It means suppressing parts of yourself, your fears, your insecurities, your need for connection, in order to fit this narrow mold. And it's not just about emotions. It's about your body, your career, your relationships. Men are judged by their physical strength, their sexual prowess, their ability to win at life. If you don't measure up, if you're not tall enough, strong enough, rich enough, confident enough, you're made to feel like you're less of a man. And even if you do check all the boxes, the pressure to maintain that performance never goes away. I remember a conversation with a guy I met at the gym, Alex. Alex was in his early 20s, ripped, and always pushing himself to lift heavier and train harder. One day after a workout, we got to talking. He admitted that he was obsessed with his physique because he felt like it was the only thing that gave him confidence. Growing up, he'd been skinny and bullied, and he'd decided that being strong was his way of proving himself. But it was never enough. He was constantly comparing himself to other guys, worrying that he wasn't big enough or cut enough. It was exhausting just listening to him, and I could see how much that pressure was weighing him down. Alex's story is a reminder that the pursuit of masculinity isn't just about external expectations. It's an internal battle, too. This pressure to perform masculinity also plays out in romantic relationships. Men are often expected to be the initiators, the pursuers, the ones who take charge. Dating culture reinforces this. Men are supposed to make the first move, plan the perfect date, and exude confidence at all times. But what if you're shy? What if you're insecure? What if you're just not sure what you're doing? For a lot of men, the fear of rejection isn't just about losing a potential partner. It's about losing their sense of self-worth. Every no feels like a confirmation that they're not good enough. I've had my own moments of grappling with this. In my early 20s, I was terrified of approaching women. I'd overthink every interaction, worrying that I'd say the wrong thing or come off as awkward. It wasn't just about the fear of being turned down. It was the fear that a rejection would mean I wasn't man enough. Looking back, I can see how much of that anxiety came from these unspoken rules about what men are supposed to be. It took years for me to realize that being myself, flaws and all, was more important than trying to fit some idealized version of masculinity. Another silent struggle tied to this is the way men are judged in their roles as fathers. Fatherhood is often portrayed as a secondary role compared to motherhood. Moms are celebrated for their nurturing, their emotional connection, their sacrifices. Dads, they're often reduced to the fun parent or the disciplinarian. But being a father is so much more than that. It's about being present, being patient, being a role model, all while navigating the same pressures to provide and perform. And yet, men rarely get the same validation for their efforts as parents. If a dad takes his kid to the park, he's babysitting. If a mom does it, she's parenting. That double standard stings. My friend Chris, a single dad, has talked about this a lot. After his divorce, he became the primary caregiver for his 2 daughters. He loves being a dad, but he's constantly second-guessing himself. I feel like I'm supposed to have all the answers, he told me once. But half the time I'm just winging it and hoping I don't screw them up. Chris is an amazing father, but he rarely hears that. Instead, he gets backhanded compliments like, "Wow, you're doing so well for a single dad." It's like the bar is set so low for fathers that just showing up is seen as exceptional. That lack of recognition is another silent struggle, one that chips away at men's confidence and sense of purpose. Let's talk about another invisible burden, the pressure to be a protector. This is deeply ingrained in how we view masculinity. Men are expected to be the ones who keep others safe, whether it's their family, their partner, or even strangers. This isn't just about physical protection, though that's part of it. It's about being the one who stays calm in a crisis, who takes charge when things go wrong, who puts others' needs before their own. And while this can be a noble role, it's also exhausting. It means men often feel like they can't show fear or uncertainty, even when they're terrified. I think about a moment from my own life that brought this home. A few years ago, I was driving home late at night with my younger sister in the passenger seat. We hit a patch of black ice and the car started to skid. My heart was pounding, but I managed to steer us back onto the road and pull over safely. My sister was shaken up and I could tell she was looking to me for reassurance. So I put on a calm face, told her everything was fine, and made a joke to lighten the mood. But inside, I was a wreck. I kept replaying the moment in my head, wondering what could have happened if I hadn't reacted quickly enough. I didn't talk about it, not with her, not with anyone, because I felt like I had to be the strong one. That's what men do, right? They protect, they reassure, they don't admit they're scared. This protector role also puts men in impossible situations. Think about the expectation that men should intervene in dangerous situations. Say, a fight breaks out or someone's being harassed. There's this cultural script that says a real man steps in no matter the risk. But what if stepping in means putting yourself in harm's way? What if you're not sure you can handle the situation? Men are often forced to choose between their own safety and the expectation to be a hero. And if they don't act, they're judged, not just by others but by themselves. It's a no-win scenario. This ties into another silent struggle, the fear of failure. For men, failure isn't just a setback, it's a personal indictment. Because so much of masculinity is tied to achievement, whether it's in your career, your relationships, or your personal goals, falling short feels like a rejection of your identity. And unlike women, who are often given more cultural permission to struggle and learn from failure, men are expected to get it right the first time. If they don't, they're seen as less competent, less reliable, less masculine. I've seen this fear of failure play out in my own career. Early on, I worked in a high-pressure job where mistakes were not tolerated. I was constantly on edge, worried that one wrong move would tank my reputation. I'd stay late, double-check every detail, and lose sleep over deadlines. When I did mess up, and everyone does eventually, I took it personally. I felt like I'd let down my team, my boss, myself. It wasn't until I talked to a mentor that I realized how much of that pressure was self-imposed. He told me, "You're not your mistakes, you're allowed to be human." That was a turning point for me, but it's a lesson too many men never hear. Another silent struggle is the way men are judged by their bodies. We've already touched on this with Alex's story, but it's worth digging deeper. Men's bodies are scrutinized in ways that are often overlooked. Height, muscle mass, hair loss, these are all markers of masculinity that men are judged on, often harshly. If you're short, you're less authoritative. If you're not muscular, you're weak. If you're balding, you're past your prime. These standards are relentless and they hit men at every stage of life. I remember a conversation with my barber, of all people. He was in his late 40s, fit and confident, but he admitted he'd started using hair loss treatments because he was worried about going bald. "It's stupid," he said, "but I feel like I'll look old if I lose my hair. Like I'm not the guy I used to be." It struck me that even someone as self-assured as him was grappling with this. And it's not just about vanity. It's about how society equates physical traits with worth. For men, losing those traits can feel like losing their place in the world. This body image pressure is compounded by the media. Look at the men we see in movies, ads, and social media. Chiseled abs, broad shoulders, perfect jawlines. These images set an impossible standard and men internalize them. A 2020 study from the Journal of Health Psychology found that men who regularly consumed media with idealized male bodies were more likely to report body dissatisfaction and engage in unhealthy behaviors like extreme dieting or steroid use. It's a silent epidemic, and it's one we rarely talk about because men aren't supposed to care about their appearance, or at least they're not supposed to admit it. Exposing my weakness. For men, owning mistakes isn't just about righting a wrong. It's about proving you're man enough to face the music. That's a silent struggle that stings every time. Another silent struggle is the expectation to be a provider of strength. Beyond physical or emotional strength, men are often expected to be a source of inner fortitude, the one who doesn't break, no matter the pressure. It's a role that assumes an unbreakable core, but every man has his limits. The pressure to provide strength is a silent struggle that asks men to endure,